Hey there, everybody. Welcome to a quickie. This is a quickie podcast episode here on Thursday, May 1st. I'm Matt Norlander. I'm just going to fly solo on this. We've got some good non-conference news to share with you here. And this podcast is going live on YouTube and in the feed in conjunction with the official announcements. So we've got news with the CBS Sports Classic. UCLA is out and St. John's is in. I'll get to the UCLA stuff in just a second here, but St. John's is going to play against Kentucky at State Farm Arena in Atlanta on December 20th. That's the Saturday before Christmas later this year. This is obviously a major game on the college hoop schedule for the entire season, but specifically in the non-conference portion of the season. This might be the last big notable non-con game or one of the final two or three before we really dive into the league season. So you'll have Rick Pitino coaching against Kentucky, coaching against his former player, Mark Pope, in what will be a high-profile matchup. And it's not just the fact that it would be Pitino against Kentucky. That's plenty interesting in and of itself. There's a chance that St. John's, Kentucky, when this game actually gets played, will be a top 10 affair. So the CBS Sports Classic annually gives us at least, it's always a doubleheader. It's only ever had Kentucky, North Carolina, Ohio State, and UCLA to this point. UCLA backing out is the first time that there's been one of those teams that hasn't played in it, and St. John's is the best case scenario because you could the fact that you could have a Kentucky and SJU going up against each other, after whatever happens in the non-conference. So we'll see, obviously, but heading in, this is as juicy as it gets. CBS Sports Classic hasn't had a plot line like this before. So this is intriguing. Word was officially announced on Thursday. Had been sitting on this for a while. Was hoping we were going to be able to break this to you exclusively, but word leaked out shortly beforehand. What can you do? Here we are. I talked with Mark Pope earlier about this matchup. Also wanted to talk to Rick Pitino. In fact, Pope and Pitino are recording some sort of FaceTime video that they're going to put out, which I think is really awesome. Pitino, I think, is in the Bahamas right now, as well he should be. You know what? May has arrived. They've done, St. John's has done incredible work in the portal here, and St. John's is a preseason top 5 level kind of team. Kentucky is entering, if it's not in the preseason top 10, it's going to be on the fringe of that. But when I talked to Pope, on cloud 9 about this, because he had been trying to figure out a way to schedule St. John's and go against Rick Pitino since he got the Kentucky job. But because Kentucky, not to get too into the weeds on this, but Kentucky, because of the number of season tickets, just the ticket demand and how much money they make off of their home games and certain agreements they have, Kentucky is actually more handcuffed by its non-conference scheduling capabilities than most other notable high major programs. And so while Mark Pope would have loved to have scheduled St. John's last season or scheduled, say, a home and home starting this season, that just wasn't going to be doable for a variety of factors. And so here we have a situation where UCLA backs out of the CBS Sports Classic and allows Pope to be able to go up against Pitino. I'll read you one of his. We've got a story on CBSSports.com. We're going to put the link into the episode description here on YouTube or on the audio version. If you're listening that way, it'll be in the description there. But here's what Pope told me. He said, quote, "Since the day we took this job, I knew this game had to happen, and it had to happen this year. We tried 1,000 ways to make it happen. It finally worked out, and I couldn't be more grateful. I love Coach Pitino from the depths of my soul. He changed my life forever. He's probably the most prolific coach in the history of college basketball when you think about everywhere he's been. He's a mentor and a friend, and I love him," end quote. Pitino did provide a quote to CBS Sports as well. He said, "Obviously, Kentucky was Camelot for me. I've said it many times. So now to play against the captain who made so many special moments for me and the team in a battle that CBS is putting on is quite special. I will remember it for a long, long time." Yeah, this is while generally speaking, when we talk about non-conference matchups and we root for as many high major games to be played on campus as possible, some of these things are going to be neutral court. CBS Sports Classic is always a neutral court event, right? Bumping. It's, one of the last big ones that leads into the Christmas break, right? And to get a game of this level in Atlanta, Catlanta, by the way, so it will be very, very well attended there. This is just a wonderful bonus and boost for college basketball and its non-conference schedule and slate overall. St. John's is going to be in the Players Era Festival in Las Vegas. That's going to be a bigger event this year than it was even last year. And I actually had some reporting on that back in back in March about just the big picture plans. I mean, that event intends on getting to 32 teams starting in 2026. So St. John's is involved in that. I believe the Red Storm are also going to play Ole Miss at Madison Square Garden this season. They're working on another big opponent. I know they were talking with Alabama. I don't think the Alabama game is going to happen anymore. Bama's searching somewhere else, but I'd expect more there. Kentucky, obviously, in the Champions Classic, working on a couple more big-time opponents there. But there will be no bigger game in the non-conference for either of these schools than this specific matchup. And as Pope told me, like, this is the 30th anniversary of the 95-96 team. He really wanted to get St. John's down to Rupp Arena to get Pitino back in Lexington at some point this season. It just wasn't manageable. And so here's a gift from UCLA. And so if you're wondering, okay, why is UCLA no longer a part of this? Well, if you listen to the pod, if you follow college basketball, it's not really a huge stunner. I had sources tell me last week that Mick Cronin basically was the decider on this. The CBS Sports Classic happening in Atlanta for this year would be another East Coast trip. Mick Cronin, on multiple occasions, had no filter whatsoever last season about his issues. Remember the quote? We've seen the Statue of Liberty twice in the past 3 weeks referencing going to Madison Square Garden for the CBS Sports Classic, flying back out west, then flying to Rutgers. I suppose you can see, why can't you see the Statue of Liberty when you're flying into Greater Piscataway or wherever the heck they landed there? So I get some of Cronin's frustrations, but by backing out, it actually gives the CBS Sports Classic the best possible matchup. I mean, St. John's versus Kentucky, it will rank among the very best non-league games we get on the slate this entire season, but UCLA will look to replace this matchup with another high-profile game with an opponent that's still to be determined. And Cronin just didn't want to have another trip out east because he's going to have, a number of them. Although he's not going to have something for UCLA. Like, UCLA will not play at Maryland and will not play at Rutgers in league play this upcoming season. Instead, like, it might have it's going to Penn State, it's going to Wisconsin, Ohio State. But regardless, he didn't want the extra trip. He thinks it works at a big disadvantage, and so deciding to pull out this late into the game is actually fairly surprising. But I was told it was Cronin's call. He was the one that was insistent that this was not going to happen. They did not want to face another long trip at the end of non-league play, and so UCLA is out. St. John's is in. Now, the CBS Sports Classic is contracted to continue through at least 2026. This event goes back more than a decade at this point, and ideally should continue in perpetuity. But as to where the game will be played in 26 and whether or not it will be UCLA, St. John's, or another team altogether, that stuff has not been decided yet and won't be decided for a good while here. I do have one more scheduling note as well before we get out of here. St. John, to the St. John's fans and Louisville fans that are watching, listening, that have been following this, Pitino at the Final Four had mentioned a hope to be able to schedule Louisville, another one of his former teams, for this upcoming season or get a series together. That is dead, I was told by sources. Like, there was a hope that it might be able to happen, but that's just not going to be on the table. So if you saw the Kentucky and St. John's news and thought, okay, is Pitino actually going to be able to try and play both Kentucky and Louisville in the same season? That's not a thing. That's the Louisville and St. John's were not even ultimately even close to being able to making that happen. Whether it could happen for the season after this upcoming one is a different discussion altogether. And if Pitino, can get it done, that'd be another big time game there. But good stuff on the CBS Sports Classic front. I love to see these high profile matchups that really mean something, that transcend even college basketball. Obviously that weekend, that Saturday of CBS Sports Classic, will also be when the college football playoff gets going. But if you want to, provided Kentucky and St. John's can be what we think they will be, ranked teams, potentially top 10 teams, that's about as loud of a matchup as you could ask for heading in, with plenty of buzz and happening and no other than Catlanta. So there you go. Quickie podcast for you. A little bonus boost here on a Thursday heading into the weekend. We appreciate everyone. Depending on how the news cycle goes, I mentioned this on a recent show. If we're pretty slow over the next few days, I think our next episode will be that long overdue mailbag episode. I've sorted through the questions. We've got most of them lined up here, but a reminder, if at any point, and for whatever pops into your mind, some of the emails we get are they're very random. They're very funny. Either Nada or I read through all of them at some point. Shouts to CBS@gmail.com. there's going to be a couple questions that come up on our next mailbag episode that, frankly, some of these questions were sent in December or January. If it's a good question and it's relevant 3-4 months later, we will eventually work it into a show. But if there's something that's newsworthy, timely, that we can get to relatively quickly thereafter, we will as well. So you got that coming around the bend. Thank you so much for listening, subscribing, and we appreciate you. We'll talk to you again real soon, early next week.